Yeah, it's about that time.
Amanda and Dan Henderson took a risk 8 months ago that about 150,000 people in Canada do every year. They got married.
The rest of the world is just falling apart within the marriage section anyway. And we talked about it and stuff, but we knew that the last thing that we were going to do was, get divorced.
Rumor has it that 50% of marriages in this country end in divorce, but it's actually much lower than that. Less than 40% of marriages will dissolve before the 30-year mark, a risk that goes down after 15 years.
We know that we're going to work through things.
Yeah.
The small things that we've had to deal with so far, I mean, they've been really minor, but we've worked through it with communication.
Right. Yeah.
We've kind of forced each other to be more honest with each other than we normally would have. Both of us, I think, would have held back in the past.
Amanda and Dan learned many of the skills they're using successfully in their first year of marriage through premarital counseling sessions at their church.
And we met a good couple through it, and they really helped us kind of just prepare ourselves. Even we had thought about the big things, I think, just on our own, but they helped us to prepare for the little things.
The small things that you just never come to mind when you're thinking about after you're married.
The Hendersons were given homework for each session that they filled out separately, answering questions about what they thought the roles of each person in marriage should be and how their upbringing impacts parenting styles.
One thing that we went through that kind of stood out to me was how we relate to our families afterwards.
Right.
There's a section on how we would involve our families and how to interact with our families. So if there was an issue between that one of us had with each other's parents, that like if Amanda had an issue with my parents, that I should be the one to speak to them so that it doesn't feel like as a couple we're defying them, so that it comes from their own flesh and blood. Yeah.
Amanda and Dan are still in early days, but say the skills they've learned are working so far. The proof? They've yet to have their first big fight.
I think there would have been a lot more little disputes and arguing and just not knowing, even though we had a lot in common during our dating relationship, and we kind of knew, we had, even before we did premarital counseling, we kind of knew what we were, what our roles were in a relationship together. I think we would have been a little bit more on edge about things, and not knowing that the man and the woman's role in a marriage, I mean, just getting that out on the table for us was the biggest thing. So if we didn't have that, I think it would have been a lot harder for us.
There's obviously no way to guarantee your walk down the aisle will be a success, but Counselor George Hartwell says troubleshooting problems in advance can help minimize conflict in the relationship later.
Things can come out, and do come out, because counselors are supposed to bring truth to the surface. Things can come out. So if your partner's willing to be part of that process, good indication that this is a good person. They're open, they're willing to take risks, and you can learn together as a couple. The other thing, from the point of view, if there's a problem later, and there probably will be, that's almost inevitable. You've already set a habit and being able to get to that point of, we've gone together to see a counselor. So there's a little clue to me.
So what is premarital counseling? The easy answer is preparation for marriage, but it can come in many forms: classes, weekends away, married couples who mentor, and pastors who require regular meetings before agreeing to perform the ceremony. Hartwell represents a fifth approach, booking sessions with a trained relationship counselor for more intense marriage preparation.
And you're part of a class, you're not going to be able to talk about your own individual issues. Say, well, we have this, and try to work it through. So you're getting some information, and our culture really believes, information, just give me the tools, give me the knowledge, we can do this. But God doesn't make us that way. He makes it so that life, especially in intimate relationships, comes out of the heart or the emotional brain. And that's where changes are needed for growth, and that's where therapy is supposed to help.
But the biggest contributor to making a marriage last, Hartwell says, is not what you know or even how much counseling you have, but something that comes from within.
I think it's attitudes that you bring, and I wouldn't even fix it on being successful as marriage, as wanting to fix an attitude that I'm going forth and make your commitments to what your life is about. God works through anything that can happen in my life and in my marriage for my good. He wants to sanctify me. Start with yourself. Perhaps that's the main thing. as you're going into marriage is say, I need to be willing to be humble, being open before God as to my own faults and grow through this process. Yeah, that's good.
And growth can occur, he says, if we allow the conflict that inevitably happens to challenge our faults and refine our insecurities.
That's one of the mysteries of life. God actually has used marriage as a tool to bring out what's in our heart, which is going to come out of usually our intimate relationships in our early family. So any issues that are in us don't necessarily come out when we're dating, when we're just at work or with our friends, because we're at one level. That's more the intellect. We're in control. We can control the appearances of how it looks. Where you can't really control that, and where emotions start to come to the surface, and as soon as emotions come to the surface, our emotional brain kicks in, and the emotional brain uses all the experiences from the past to decide what to do, not our good, reasonable answer. Though your spouse at the time may look like you're an enemy, but God is actually using your intimate enemy to bring forth things from within. If you have the humility to say, it's not all you, I will look at myself, then God can use that process.
So let's say you're willing to do all that. You have the right attitude and humility. You work through the issues and talk through life challenges such as how to handle money and raise kids. But you still have doubts. Should you be worried?
There's normal jitters as a couple is approaching marriage. This is a big commitment. Yeah, jitters are normal, and sometimes counselors are helpful through that. Just somebody that you can talk to and somebody you can sort of support it. You may want to even meet individually with that counselor and say, look, I have some questions. Did you see some of the things I'm seeing in this person? And the counselor may not say that in front of the other person because you want people to discover this for themselves, understand for themselves. You're not just like, oh, hello, you shouldn't get married. But if you have doubts and questions, and come and speak to the counselor and say, okay, I have some doubts and questions. Do you see the same things, or am I missing something? And the counselor can help you balance out things.
Premarital experts point out that people spend years in school preparing for their career and rarely take up a serious sport or hobby without some sort of training. And yet every year, thousands embark on one of the biggest decisions of their lives with almost no preparation. Now more than ever, resources of all kinds are available to help make your walk to the altar a success.
Good job.
Tomorrow, love, marriage, and children. How to keep a marriage alive once baby comes home.